everybody, welcome back to my kitchen. So thanks for joining me. Today we are going to roast pumpkins. We're also going to roast a butternut squash. I should turn it up right. Okay. So one of the things that I do every fall, I buy, as soon as they start hitting the stores, every time I go to the grocery store, I buy 2 to 4 pumpkins, the small pie pumpkins. Okay, now sometimes I buy the big regular size ones, but most of the time I buy the pie pumpkins. They're a little bit sweeter, and so when we roast them, that sugar is going to come out. So just something to keep in mind, because I don't like buying canned pumpkin. Okay, so we're going to roast our own. I'm going to measure it out, and I freeze it to start with in one of these. It's a chocolate mold, actually. Like originally what I got it for was for chocolate, but I like this size because these each work out to be about a half a cup, 8-ish ounces. So when I'm making something, the majority of them are like, it'll say 1 can. That would be 2 of these squares. Sometimes you don't need a whole can. What are you going to do with the rest of it? So if I do that, I can put it in here and I freeze it. Once they're frozen really solid, I put them in a good, freezer safe type of bag and keep them all year. So oftentimes there's lots of those, or as long as I can. Sometimes I don't make it all year. So anyway, let's get to that. I'm gonna switch cameras and I'll be right back to you. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do to start with. We're gonna cut our pumpkins in half, scoop out the seeds. Did you know that the average pumpkin has like 500 seeds in it, the regular size ones? These won't have quite as many because they're smaller, but they're still in there. One of the things that you need to make sure, the most important thing you need to make sure, is that you have a sharp knife. Okay. So I use this knife. I've had this, I don't know how many years, I've had it forever. But every time I use it, I sharpen it. So I just slide it very carefully across like this, both sides. I count to 100. I do it every time I wash them. I never put my knives in the dishwasher, so I hand wash them. And then when I'm ready to use them, when I take them out of the drawer that they're stored in that only has knives in it, it's sharp. So just a little FYI, the most dangerous piece of, I shouldn't say the most, but in my opinion, the most dangerous piece of equipment in the kitchen is a dull knife. So you want to make sure you have a good sharp knife. So I'm just going to cut this dog in half. On another little, piece of trivia, did you know that everything, including the stem, is technically edible? Okay. Sharp knife doesn't mean pumpkin's that much any easier to cut. Okay. So I'm just going to work my way around, and as I get a little farther through, I'm going to get to this edge. I'm going to get to this top piece. What else do you want to know about pumpkins? Pumpkins are technically a fruit, same way that tomatoes are. They're actually a member of the melon family. I didn't know that until I was doing a little research for this. I knew they were considered a fruit. Okay. So then I have all of this. Everything in a pumpkin is edible. They say even the stem. I'm not sure I'm really ready to try that. So if somebody wants to eat the stem or do whatever you do with the stem, go right ahead, let me know how it goes. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other one. We're going to scoop them all out, and I'll show you what we got to do to get them ready to roast them. Okay, so I got my pumpkins. They're basically cleaned out. I'm not worried about them being super cleaned out because we're going to puree them and strain out a lot of stuff anyway. So, but you need to get most of the seeds out, or all the seeds out, and then a lot of the stringy stuff, your favorite part when you're making your jack-o'-lanterns for Halloween. On that note, did you know Did you know the jack-o'-lanterns were originally made out of potatoes and turnips by the Irish? Just saying. So the last thing I'm going to do is cut off the stem. And so I can do it a couple different ways. Sometimes we can get it to just come off, and sometimes we can't. So I'm just going to cut in a little bit. Again, let's talk about sharp knives. Sharp knives make the work so much easier for oneers. For twos, if you should happen to get an injury from a knife, if it's a sharp knife, you're going to get a nice clean cut. That sounds pretty horrible, doesn't it? But dull knife, you're going to get a really jaggedy type of cut, which is much harder for your person, your surgeon, your ER doc, to sew back together. You'll have more scarring. It's so much better if you use a sharp knife. Okay, so I have these now. I'm going to place them on a pan. And we're just I'm gonna start them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like so. I'm gonna brush a little bit of oil on them. If you know that you're going to use them for something specific, like say something savory, you can use an oil that's already flavored. So sometimes I use one of my flavored. We have a company here in the Kansas City area. I don't know if you have it where you are. I don't know how national they are. Called Heavenly Oils and Vinegars. And they make a whole bunch of flavored oils. So sometimes when I'm roasting, depending on what I'm doing, I'll go ahead and put, like with my mac and cheeses, that kind of stuff, I'll use one of the flavored oils. If I'm using the pumpkins right away, obviously I'm not with these because we're going to freeze these dogs. So I just spread a little bit all the way around. It's going to keep a little bit moist. We're going to check on them in a little bit, but we're going to put these in my preheated oven, which has been heating up for, I don't know, an hour or so, at 425. I'll probably look at them in about 40 minutes, see how they're doing. What we want is the edges. Actually, I want to start them all upside down. So I forgot to do that. Which is going to seal in some of the heat. What we want is, I'm going to turn that one around since I cut the whole one out. Where's this one? Is here. Okay. We're going to look for some blistering on the outside, and we're going to want them to be fork tender to know that they're getting close to being done. So we're going to put those in the oven, and I'll see you in an hour or so. Okay, so we're getting really close to the time, so I got about 4 or 5 minutes left on my timer up here. You can see my lights. So we're gonna pop in the oven. Actually, we're gonna bend down here. We're gonna look in the oven. I don't know if you can see. I don't know how well you can see in there. But they're getting a nice deep orange on the outside. So let's open it up. That smells lovely. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this out of here. Can you see that? Yeah, look, I got some nice blistering spots. We should be just about perfect. Oh yeah. Look at that. So it's giving way. Nice. All right, we're gonna pull this out of here. So I'm gonna put the camera down. And I'll show you in just a minute. Okay, you can probably see this better. I didn't do a very good job of holding the camera so you could see it in the oven. So what we're looking at here is, look how easy I can poke those. Got some blistering spots here. You can see them a little bit better. They're gonna start to shrivel up as they cool. One of the things I'm gonna do is kind of lift them, make sure they're not stuck. I'm gonna grab a spatula. And we're gonna go ahead and flip them over. Okay. Look at that. Okay. This is gonna help them cool off a little bit faster. So I can't put them in my food processor to puree them till they're cool enough to handle. And so we're gonna let them sit like this. Look, can you see the steam coming off of them? I start to peel it as I go a little bit, just because I can't stop playing with them. They're a little too hot to handle. Okay. But as I do this, it makes it easier. And so when the time comes, we will puree them, strain them, and we'll be back and we'll have our own puree. Okay, so we've been cooling for a little bit. You can see I've already done 3 of them, but I just want to show you a little bit about what I do. So I'm not gonna lie, it's hard for me to not just keep playing with them because I want it over with. So I have these gloves. I've gotten it nice and gross. They're actually more for using with my mandolin, so protecting your hands when you're slicing really fast. But I use them for a lot of other stuff. It just gives me a little tiny bit of insulation between the pumpkin and my fingers so I can hold on to it while I'm working with it. So one of the things I do is I take one of those small, so you can see I already used it, you know, this small little tiny paring knife, the cheapy ones, like this is one of the 3 in a pack at the grocery store. And I go around the edge and I break that seal, and I was showing you a little bit about that in a moment ago. So I just keep going around that and I break that seal. I do the same thing quite literally with cheesecake when it comes out of the oven. Like, it's the exact same process, only I use a different tool. But it's the same idea. As I do this, it's going to break that loose. Okay? And sometimes it'll almost peel completely off. Sometimes it won't. It just depends. It depends on how long you've been cooking it. So sometimes it starts to fall apart, like that one's doing. But doing that lets some of that extra heat out, and then I can hold on to it, as you can see, because my fingers are all yellow and gross. And then I use my fork to just keep peeling it away. Okay, so I'm not steaming anymore. Sometimes whole sections will roll off. Like, look at that. That whole piece is coming out of there. And that's really what we're shooting for. Okay, is to get as much of that, and we're going to take that off. Let's set that right there for right now. So that in a little bit, again, I can pop it in my food processor, which I have sitting here, and puree it and strain what I need to a little bit, and then pop it in the freezer, and I have pumpkin all year, or a good chunk of the year. All right, so when that's a little bit cooler to handle and I can use my food processor, I'll be back. All right, we're back. So you're still in my tiny little kitchen. So we're making this work so you can see what I'm doing. So I have my roasted pumpkin here. I have my Cuisinart here, or my Cuisinart food processor. And then I have a bowl here that's been lined, so it's just a glass bowl, lined with cheesecloth. Oh, that was loud. Okay. So what's going to happen is I'm going to start to scoop some of this into my food processor. It's just fitted with an S blade. Okay, so you can see that, fitted with the blade. And we're going to puree it, and then we're going to put it in here, and we're going to strain it. Okay, so sorry, you lost part of my face. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to make some noise. It's going to be great. All right, so here we go. Am I plugged in? Unplugged in. So I'm just going to start scooping some of this in here. Not tons. So you can see it's still steaming a little bit down here on the inside. And it's going to get loud. We're going to put the, whoops, we don't want that up there. Put that on. Put the top piece in, all those squirrely things that are safety parts, and we're going to start on low. And then we're going to pump up the high. take the lid off. Come on, come out of there. And we're just gonna make sure we scoop everything back down. And I'm just gonna keep doing this. I don't know if you can see, so we went from something that looks like this, from something that looks all stringy like this, to something that's a lot more smooth like this. But this is way too wet to use in any sort of cooking. So we're gonna just do this a few more times every so often. I'm gonna scrape down the bowl every so often. I'm gonna empty the bowl into the cheesecloth. And I'll get back to you when we're done putting everything into the food processor. Okay, a little bit more. Next step, we have all of our puree in here wrapped in our cheesecloth. So the important part about this is it doesn't lint. And you know, we don't get any of the extra fibers, that kind of stuff. So we're going to use it to drain some of this water out. I probably would do this in smaller batches, but I'm just giving you a general idea. Actually, when I turn off the video, I'll reduce this to smaller amounts, but it lets you see what we're doing. So if I pull all of this up, actually, you can look in here. Like you can see, it's starting to get wet around, and you can see the water. You see the water pulling in here? That's where it's already starting to drain out. So I'm just going to keep pulling. Look at that. Can you see that water coming out of there? Okay, so we're just going to keep doing that over and over again until we have all of the water out of it. Sometimes I'll let it sit in a strainer above a bowl for quite a while. Okay, look at that. Okay, so we're going to let it do that, and when we're done, we'll measure it out and we'll put it in that mold I showed you earlier so that we can freeze it. Okay, so this has been sitting for a little bit, and then something else that I've done. So I think originally I said I was going to put it in a smaller bowl. Decided not to. I got my great big, I have one of those great big salad bowls. Then I have an extending strainer, so you can see I have a fine mesh strainer. And I wrapped it up and I squeeze and I squeeze and I squeeze and I push and I push and I push. And then I put another towel and I do the same thing and I fold it all up. I can show you real quick. This one was all folded up nice and tight. Oops. Okay. And I try to make sure so that there's no places for it to really gap out. Then I put this one over the top of it, do the same thing, and I push down with the third, and I push, and I push, and I push until you can see there's liquid in the bowl. Okay. So now so yes, I did use 3 white towels. I do not use bleach, so you don't have to ever worry about that. I use from a different company that is very environmentally conscious, so my towels, you know, it wasn't stained when you saw it. These towels only ever get used for this. Okay. Again, because they're linen, or they're lint free for them. And so now I have this consistency. So if I had a can you see that? So now if I had a can of pumpkin, it would be about the same. Okay? So now we're going to clean up my mess just a little bit because I made a bit of a mess. Clean that up. We're going to sit this to the side. And I have my square, I don't know how big they are, I set the spatula on it a little bit ago. I don't need to put anything in it. I don't need to like pre-coat it. None of that, because it's rubber, silicone, so when I'm ready I can just flip them inside out. Okay. So I'm going to take small amounts. We're going to use something smaller. Let's do a spoon. We're going to take some amounts. We're just going to fill this up. And I'm going to do all of them. So this one has 8. We'll see how many I get. We may or may not get 8. And, oops. Usually I do more pumpkins, so I'll usually do 4 pumpkins, which helps me get quite a bit more done, or make quite a bit more. Okay. Oops. So I don't know how much whoops. I don't know how much a can of pumpkin is in your neighborhood. I don't even know how much it is in mine because it's been so long since I bought it. But for about $3, I made $3 in my time, plus my time. 4 cans, approximately 4 cans of pumpkin. And so we got quite a bit more here. Because each of these little squares is, like I said before, about half a cup. Or about, yeah, whatever it is. It comes out to the equivalent of about 4 cans. I have measured that before. Because I took a can previously and divided it up in here. So sometimes I get a little bit more, sometimes I get a little bit less, but I know in the end that I have about, I probably have 3.5 cans. I take this one, fill these up. Yeah. And get that in there. And then obviously it doesn't matter if they're super smooth on top, because we're just going to freeze them. So I'm going to take this and put it in the freezer. And whenever I want to make something with pumpkin, then I have it. Okay. So just some other fun facts for you. Did you know the largest pumpkin pie ever baked was 3,699 pounds? I am not a huge pumpkin pie person. I like pumpkin cheesecake, but I'm not a huge pumpkin pie person. I have no idea how much whipped cream it would take to be able to eat that, but it would have to be a lot. What else do I want to tell you? I already told you. The #1 pie in America is not pumpkin, even in the fall. It's apple pie, because apples rule. Pumpkin rules. So, and the last thing I want to make sure you know, that the first time the word pumpkin showed up anywhere was in 1584. Actually, the word pumpkin, the first time the word pumpkin showed up was in the Cinderella fairy tale, the way that it's used. And then in 1584 was the first time that we had seen them. They were, it was a French term, gros malins. Like I said before, they're associated with the melon family, which makes them a fruit, not a vegetable. Okay, because a fruit has a skin, the meaty part, and seeds inside, just like a pumpkin. Anyway, that is it for today. So take your pumpkins, your pumpkin or roasted pumpkins, freeze it. And then after I freeze it, After I freeze it, I will pop them out of here, put them into bags, and I'll repeat this process again next weekend, because I'll do this until pumpkins are no longer available. Pie pumpkins are no longer available in my store. So have a good weekend, and I'll see you next time in the kitchen with Bobbi.